Japan is surrounded by the sea, and is known for its thriving fishing industry. The sea has bestowed a lot of wealth onto the population of Japan. The sea is full of beauty and grace, but the sea isn't there for the purpose of our wealth and fortune. The gentle blue rippling waves hides terror, danger, and loss of life. Just ask a fisherman. I've heard some liken the briny deep to hell. It must be a tough and dangerous line of work. Even today, with all our technology and how far the world has advanced, the sea can still lead you to distress. I wonder what it must have been like to cross the sea on a vessel that was man-powered. How hard that must have been. Naturally, in Japan, there are many yokai related to the sea. Have you ever heard of yokai? It's a kind of creature, demon, fairy, or goblin out here in Japan. I'm sure that the definitions will vary based on each case. You might even consider these things cryptids, and you might not. In this section, photos will appear on the screen every now and then. I guess that the most famous yokai would be umibozu. It's what we call a sea spirit. Here's a picture. It breaches the surface of the calm sea when ships approach with the intention of capsizing their ships. These giant hulking black monstrosities tower over ships and are a source of terror for fishermen throughout Japan and Japanese history. Some say that these are manifestations of the spirits of drowned priests or monks. Their heads are always smooth and bold, like that of a monk. They are humanoid in appearance and are often depicted with huge eyes and squid ink black skin. I put a little link in the description to a trailer of a film where you can see one emerge from the water. Looks like a pretty crazy film as well. Anyway, even nowadays we're hearing of strange new sightings of cryptids or creatures out at sea. There was New Nessie, or as it's known in the West maybe, the Zuiyomaru carcass. A strange carcass belonging to an unknown creature was caught off the coast of New Zealand by a Japanese fishing vessel. It looked not too dissimilar to a plesiosaur. However, further research has all but confirmed that this is the remains of a basking shark. If that's the case, then surely we would have mistook more basking sharks for Nessies. Then we have Kabigon. In 1974, on the afternoon of April the 28th, 6 crew members of the Japanese expedition vessel Kompira Maru No. 28 were sailing once again off the coast of New Zealand. According to their testimony, only the creature's head was visible, but they said it was about 1.5 meters in size. The creature stared at the crew for a few moments and then disappeared back beneath the waves. One of the eyewitnesses was the captain of the ship, and he drew a picture of the creature. The body was a brownish grey color. Its head was covered in wrinkles. It had squashed nostrils, and its eyes were large and glowing red. Some online debunkers say that the captain mistook the creature for a seal. I wonder though, I haven't heard of a seal being that big. What do you think? Sea serpents are known throughout the world and are seen as no strangers to Japanese waters. The history of their sightings goes back centuries, usually depicted as reptiles, but unlike other reptiles, their manner of swimming differs. They swim in an up-down motion like mammals, instead of twisting and turning their bodies left and right. As a result of this, their bodies breach the surface of the sea in a number of bumps and arcs. Could there be some truth to the so-called sightings? The seas surrounding Japan are not only home to yokai, monsters and cryptids, but spirits and the paranormal. Funayure are spirits of the deceased who died at sea. Said to be incredibly vengeful, they haunt the seas of Japan. Their ghosts wander the sea due to their regret. They call for sailors to give them a ladle, a kind of scoop of water used in times gone by, but you should never give them that, because if you do, thousands of arms emerge from the ocean, holding ladles that intend to fill your vessel with water to the point it sinks, and there you will join them in the briny deep. An older image perhaps of lost souls at sea, but the message is clear. Out in the ocean, don't listen to the call of the bodiless voices inviting the living to the drowned underworld. Keep the image of those spirits in mind for this collection of stories. Another example of the paranormal at sea. You feel something cold grab your leg as you tread water or swim. You look down to see a blue hand wrapped around your leg, pulling you. The hand belongs to another lost soul at sea that seemingly wants your company in the deep. I personally have read a few stories about this phenomenon, but mainly in lakes and rivers. The sea is full of monsters. The monotony of the sea, which can feel as if it eternally flows. This infinite, open body of water is the paper for the human mind to project dark images and paint a vision of fear. Black Njordal is a little-known yokai story that I think deserves a little more attention. According to one theory, the souls who have been lost at sea seek to return to the shore. They want to come back home. Coastal homes in Chiba Prefecture are warned against responding to knocks at the door late at night. The spirit manifests itself as a completely black silhouette. No features are recognizable save for the outline of a human being. They return to where they believe their homes are. Never open the door though, even to a deceased family member. No matter how much your heart aches, would it be really wise to break the boundary between the living and the dead? So watch out for those knocks at night if you live by the sea, or who knows, maybe they got a little further than the coast, and maybe they found your home. Maybe they're ready to come back. Keep that door shut. And with that, let's dive straight into some terrifying tales from the briny deep. Please like, share, and subscribe. My dad told me about his trip to Antarctica. I want to go into detail, but I can't go into too much detail. Let's just say this happened a few years ago. Also, my dad's occupation might get found out if I don't choose my words correctly. So, sorry, I'll have to keep it vague. All I can say is he's involved in research in Antarctica. Anyway, let's get into this. My dad has a good friend in his company, and he was excited to go on a research expedition with him. They worked at the same company for years, but they never went on research trips together, so it was the first time for them to leave Japan on the same ship. We'll have to call him Mr. N. One night long before the expedition, over drinks, Mr. N told my dad something unusual. Dad said that he totally disrupted the flow of the carefree conversation. In an instant, Mr. N looked very serious, and then he said, "During the last exhibition, the icebreaker crew of the SS Shirase apparently saw some kind of unknown creature. They called it a monster." Well, my dad passed it off at the time as a missed sighting. He suggested that the crew mistook the creature for an iceberg or a whale or something. Mr. N then described what the crew said they saw. It was like a giant. They saw the upper body of a giant humanoid rising up out of the sea. Some said it must have been between 15 to 20 meters in size. It broke the surface and then disappeared. There were movements under the water that suggested there could be more things lurking down there in the deep. This was all a few months ago, and by the time my dad's fleet arrived in Antarctica, my dad said that he had completely forgotten the story Mr. N told him over those drinks. They set sail, and several days after observation began, my dad said that he heard an awful lot of noise coming from the deck. The crew were up in arms. He went down to the deck to see what all the fuss was about. When asked, the crew replied, almost in unison, that they had seen a huge, white-skinned human breach the water. Hearing the description of that creature, my dad was reminded of the story Mr. N told him, so he went to find him on the ship. Then Mr. N asked my dad to go gather the crew who saw the creature and then bring them to his room. When they arrived, Mr. N asked the crew to fill out documents in detail about their sightings. Once the forms were complete, Mr. N told my dad that it was the same unidentified creature his crew had seen. An investigation began after that. All the upper management wanted evidence of this thing, but to this day, the only conclusion we have is that it must have been some kind of malformed whale. My dad and Mr. N don't buy that though. My dad seems to think that a hole in the ozone layer has some kind of influence over that area, or perhaps there is some sort of other unknown influence. Who knows what goes on down there? According to my dad, who has actually seen pictures of strange things out there, there is a lot of malformation. Some conjoined creatures with huge heads, some disturbing creatures not too dissimilar to spiders, but bigger. My dad says that most of the strange things he's seen out there almost look human-like, but with strange, swollen body parts, usually the heads. It really freaks me out to think that there could be some horrible, unimaginable things out there beneath the sea and hiding in the ice, surviving, changing into something else. As a possibly pleasant side note, my dad seems to believe that Stella's sea cow isn't extinct. A few years ago, I was at work listening to the radio. It was summertime, and it was the middle of the day. I wasn't really focusing on the radio until it was about 11 a.m. Something piqued my interest. A scary story special was starting. The host was asking callers to phone in with their creepy experiences and stories. It was right up my alley because I love spooky stuff. At the time, I was the only one in the office, so I could listen to it in peace. It was the middle of the day and the weather was fine, so I was ready for stories. I didn't think I'd get creeped out. There were some great stories, the standard kind of thing, lost in the woods, urban exploration, and close encounters with weirdos and dangerous people. I was enjoying it. I was eagerly awaiting the next story. So I will recount it exactly as I remember it. It may not be verbatim, but I'll give it a go. So the radio personality will sound like this, and the caller will sound like this. And we have another caller on the line, ready to share their scary experience. Hello, caller.
Hello.
Can I ask your name and where you're calling from?
I'm a housewife calling from Ishikari in Hokkaido. I always listen to your show.
Well, I am always happy and grateful to hear from a long-time listener. Thank you. So, do you have a creepy experience you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, happens all the time. In fact, it's happening right now. I can see them.
And who can you see?
My house is by the sea, right next to the sea. They're here now. Standing on the sea, right on the sea level.
Someone is standing on the sea. What are we talking about here? A person?
Yeah, a person. Well, more than one person. There's a lot of them.
You can see people standing on the water. What are they doing?
What they always do. They just stare at me. All of them. They just look my way. They're always watching. I want to move away from here. I see other things. Terrible things.
Well, thank you so much for your call, but I have to move on to the next caller.
Okay.
Then the caller just hung up. The radio host didn't say a word. He just went straight to the commercials. I found that call very creepy. It painted such a scary picture in my mind that I began to get freaked out during the day. I could see those figures on the surface of the water glaring at the housewife in my mind so clearly that I had to go outside to be in the company of people. You know, they say that the sea is the final resting place for countless lost lives. Are they trying to come back? I've heard rumors that people hear knocks at their door in the middle of the night. People who live close at sea. No more scary stories at work for me. This happened a long time ago, when I was in junior high school. I had just finished my classes for the day, and I was walking home with a good friend of mine. It was a warm day in our coastal town. By the way, I live by the sea. So my friend and I were walking along chatting as usual, when a woman dressed in black approached. She looked to be in her 40s. She was tall and thin, and she was wearing a big black hat too. She wasn't mourning or anything. She just looked a little weird, I guess. "How close is the sea?" she asked. She asked it in such a dull voice and stood in our path in an alley, stood stock still. She asked me, so I told her. The route to the beach was a little complex from where we were, so I explained it the best I could. She thanked my friend and me, and then she left. I spoke with my friend and we were a little surprised that she wanted to go to the beach at that time of day. The sun was setting. There wasn't much to do there anyway. It wasn't a tourist beach. I realized that it was a bit of a one-sided conversation I was having with my friend, so I asked him what was up. He said, "Man, she really creeped me out." After that, we walked home in silence. He was right though. There was something a little off about that woman. She seemed to be in a daze. Maybe she was overtired or something. After me and my friend parted ways, I kept on thinking about the woman, but by the time I got home, I forgot about her. That night, I got a call from my friend, and even though we are really good friends, he never called me, nor I him. In fact, it was the first time he called me. My dad called me from the bottom of the stairs. We didn't have mobile phones back then, we had house phones. And as soon as I put the phone to my ear, he said, "Remember that woman we met today, who asked us how close the sea was?" "Yeah." "Her body was found in the sea." "You're kidding." It was really weird. I felt a strange sense of panic about the situation, and I don't know why I felt like that. Panic was followed by a sense of creepiness that I cannot describe. I then asked about how he knew that, and he said it was his brother who discovered the body. Well, he said his older brother was called by one of his friends who found the body, and then that friend asked his older brother if he wanted to go see, and he did. But by the time they got there were a bunch of rubberneckers gawking at the scene. The police followed shortly after and cordoned off the area. If the police and the others didn't find the body, would I have gone to take a look? I'm not sure. Maybe, but probably not. I don't think I'd be able to get the image of a woman in black motionlessly floating in the sea out of my head if I did anyway. Later, I read about the incident in the paper. Well, I didn't really need to read about it. The story of the body in the water was on every pair of lips in our little seaside town. The cause of death wasn't suspicious. She took her own life. Now, the scary point about this story is the following. When we met that woman, we didn't know that we were face to face with a killer in that alley. She headed for the beach after she killed her husband. The manner of killing is not something I really can go into, because not all the details were released by the authorities, but I'm guessing that it was kind of gruesome. To think that we were probably the last people she saw before she ended things. The outcome could have been very different, I guess. I wonder what might have happened if we said something wrong, maybe annoyed her or something. She could have reacted. I don't want to think about what kind of reaction that might have been, though. The incident occurred in 1991 or 1992. I don't remember the time of year that well, but like I say, it was kind of hot, maybe between summer and autumn. The article should have been in either the Yomiuri Shimbun or the Kanagawa Shimbun. I think about it often. It was real traumatic for me. Thinking back on it makes me shudder. I talked to a killer. My family home faces the beach and the ocean. Not a sandy beach, but one with pebbles. When I was in elementary school, I did this weird and slightly dangerous thing when I was too hot at night. I would sneak out of the house and head to the beach to cool down. We didn't have an air conditioner. If my parents found out I was doing that, I probably would have been in a lot of trouble. I used to go out into the dark ocean just wearing my underwear. I didn't go far out. I didn't even swim that often, so I wasn't in any danger of drowning. I just used it as an opportunity to cool down. I was careful not to step on sea urchins or anything sharp. There was a campsite nearby, and there were university dormitories close too. I never really felt like I was unsafe on my nightly expeditions. Some nights you would hear fireworks going off out there until late night. Our family had a food stall on the beach, and I would help out even from a young age, so I felt the beach was kind of an extension of our home. There were a bunch of beach houses and hotels, so when I snuck out to cool down, I kind of felt like I was on vacation, or as if I was a customer or a holidaymaker in my hometown. It's silly, but I was very young. So anyways, I was about 6 or 7 years old when this happened. I was out on the beach alone at around 10 p.m. It was June, so the water wasn't warm. I didn't need to go for a swim. I came out for a different reason that night, and I was excited to be the only person on the beach. Have you ever heard of noctiluca? They're also known as sea sparkles. They make the sea glow. It's very beautiful. Here's a photo of some. They turn the sea red in the day, but they shine a beautiful blue at night. They illuminate the sea. I wanted to go out that night to see the glow. I never really thought of the beach as a tourist spot, but it looked like I was in a totally different world when I was there that night. It would have looked a lot nicer if the sea was a little calmer though. The waves were rhythmically lifting up the sea sparkles and crashing them back down. The sea was choppy. I was watching the waves crash into the rocks that jutted out of the ocean. When further out, I noticed something unusual. One spot on one of the rocks looked different. There was a strange glow coming from the rock. It looked like the silhouette of a human. When the waves rose up, before crashing down, I felt as if I could see the upper half of a body. The head and the arms of a human. I watched with interest for a while, struggling to understand what I was seeing. It looked like the human shape I was looking at was formed, then destroyed, then formed again, as if it was in some kind of endless loop. Then something clicked in my brain. It looked like whatever the humanoid thing was trying to crawl out of the ocean onto the rocks. I wanted to get a little nearer, to get a closer look, but I thought that the sea looked too dangerous for me to brave it. I could see myself getting crashed into those rocks if I lost my footing, or a particularly heavy wave crashed over me. I think I must have watched that strange illuminated humanoid thing try to crawl out of the sea onto the rocks for about 20 minutes or so. And then I went back home because I became frightened that some kind of sea monster or cryptid would finally achieve its goal of hoisting itself out of the sea onto land. The next morning there was a commotion on the beach. Everyone was staring off to the rocks that I had been looking at the night before. There was a body out there. It was an old lady. What I had thought was some sort of monster was an old woman struggling for her life, covered in sea sparkles, against the crashing waves.